One of the best rivalries in college football is back with its highest rated matchup since 2013. And we got VCNole from Garnet and Old from the FSU side here to talk about it. How you doing today, Vince?
I'm doing great. This is a big week. Even after what happened on Friday, it's still a huge week. I am pumped up about it. It's one of my favorite weeks of the season.
Vince, what I would love for you first is tell everyone about you, where they can find you. I love watching your show to get a Florida State take, but I want everybody else to get that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me on. The more we can get our show out there, the better. So I appreciate that. My name is Vince. I'm at VCNole on X. So if you're looking for some Florida State fandom to follow, even if you're a rival, I enjoy it all. So come on and follow. The show is called Garnet and Old. My co-host and I started this show about 3 years ago. We are fans first and foremost, and our mantra is no inside info, no contacts, no problem. Although over the course of 3 years, we have garnered some contacts, but we have a weekly show on Thursday nights at 7, and we just enjoy talking about the Noles, talking about college football in general. Um, and I think you'll find that our show is fair. We definitely like to poke fun at our rivals, just like they would,
Absolutely.
just like they would with us. But you would find our show to be fair, I would think.
It's the state of the Knoll Nation, right? It's
Yeah.
been an interesting couple of years. We've had you on different things before. After Friday night,
Yeah.
with the build up, but then the results of that game, like how did people feel heading into this week?
So if you were to ask me prior to the game, the majority of the fan base, the majority of the content creators that are out there, the majority of the media had Florida State winning by over the spread. And that was due to mostly because of what we saw based on the Bama game.
For sure.
Um,
I was one of
the
those people that had you over the spread,
Yeah,
just to be clear.
yeah. The next two games, anybody that has a couple of brain cells to put together understand that those games were what they were. They were scrimmages. They were a chance for younger guys to get in and play a ton of snaps. Um, I personally didn't take anything away from those games, thinking that they were some kind of referendum on the season. I enjoyed those games. But I didn't look at those go, no, yeah, we are on the climb to an undefeated season. Um, we, my co-host Ryan and I both were of the opinion that we still didn't face any real adversity yet. Florida State dominated Bama in that game. That was a
Absolutely.
dominating win. So I did not feel any adversity from that game. There was no adversity from the second two games. So this was our first chance. And while the offense played well enough to win, and even had some adversity early in the game, they continued to rack up yardage and rack up points. They were not perfect, but they did enough to win the game. The defense is the thing that fell apart, right? And they just could not get off the field, and so that was a question mark. And that question was not answered
Right.
Friday night. It just was not. There was a lot of it seemed to be a lot of almost. The defense almost got it. Like they almost were there. They almost made the tackle. They almost stripped the ball. They almost got a pick six. And when you almost yourself through a game like that, and Virginia's offense is, and I said this during our show, Virginia's offense is nothing to sneeze at. They have weapons, and they are talented, and they are seasoned. So when you almost yourself through a game, you get what we got.
So I have to say, I wish this game in some ways was happening a few more weeks down the road.
Sure.
Not because of not because Virginia beat Florida State, because I have absolutely no idea what to think about this game. Because on the one hand, we have like the transitive property of college football completely is breaking down around this game. Not that it ever really works. On the one hand, Florida State to me was clearly dominating against Alabama. in every single way against a team that, if you looked at the preseason unit rankings, had both their offensive line and defensive line usually in the preseason top 5 for units, or offensive line rooms, whatever. At worst, top 10, and at really worst, others getting mentioned. But those were outliers, and Florida State didn't really have those. Virginia certainly didn't have those. But I watched Florida State bully the living heck out of Alabama. And maybe Alabama was looking past you guys, and I think people diminished Florida State too much because they just instantly devalued Alabama as opposed to lifting Florida State. And I was a skeptic, but I became not after that, and I leaned towards Florida State's a lot better. And maybe Alabama, is actually really good still. They just had a bad day. But then I watched on Friday night, and I watched every single play. It was an awesome game to watch if you're not a fan.
It really was
an exciting, fun. It was one of the most fun games I can remember in the recent memory. I understand Florida State fans are probably not too thrilled, but just from a pure, wow, this is a great Friday night game, as Friday night games tend to be. The reverse happened to me. I couldn't understand how Florida State, with Virginia having 3 of their 5 offensive linemen out on a unit that wasn't even well regarded in the ACC, let alone college football, kind of got bullied around. So now, as a Miami fan or just a college football fan, if there's one thing I know about Miami, and if there's one thing that they're getting praise about in college football national beat writers, is that Miami's trenches on both sides of the ball are pretty damn stellar.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't know how to even think about where this game is going to be, because I'm not sure which team Florida State is. Is it the Alabama team on the trenches, or what happened with Virginia? So I guess as you've watched Miami and seeing those 2 games up close, how do you look at that key matchup, I think, in this game?
It's an unknown at this point because, I think the defensive line on Friday night, at least Daryl Jackson, held his own. You don't get a lot of stats out of that guy because he's clogging, and his job is to clog and to let other people make plays. And he did that. The other guys didn't make plays. So going into the game, obviously Carson Beck is not as mobile as Chandler Morris, right?
Sure.
So that piece of it, we don't necessarily have to worry about. And I don't know, I'll just echo kind of what you said. I don't know what to expect because I expect the offense to play well, right? I expect the offense to play well. I expect them to be able to run the ball. I expect them to put up points. And one thing for sure, they are not going to back down. Any adversity that hits the offense, they are going to continue to grind away. This team has a spark in them to not give up. So that in and of itself, I know that to be true. From the defensive standpoint, if they don't get any kind of pressure on Beck, it's going to be, he has the ability to be surgical and make things really, really painful for the defense. So was Friday, Florida State's first trip on the road, guys not finishing a play? You'll hear Tony White talk about this. They were there. They were there and they made the initial stick. So, but a 3-yard thing turns into 7 yards because they did not finish at the point of attack. So do you get that part, that Alabama game effort, that Alabama game finishing, or do you get the Friday night game finishing? I think that is the difference in what we see from the defensive side.
That's the thing I noticed too, and maybe I'm more cognizant of it because Miami had an epically bad defense last year, epically bad. The one thing I noticed the most this year, besides how ridiculous Ruben Bain and Messidor have been, is just there are always 7 people around the ball. So if somebody does have that stop after 3 yards and somehow doesn't tackle up, there's usually somebody else behind there. That is what I saw for Florida State in the opener. Didn't really see that on Friday night, to the detriment of the team. Let's say somebody hadn't seen Florida State so far this year. Tell everyone a little bit about what you've been seeing from Castellanos, but also Deuce, who, to me, those were the 2 of the 3 people who really showed up on Friday night, regardless of the outcomes. How have you seen what Castellanos has brought, not just on the field, but to the team, outside of the conversations he had over the summer? He certainly isn't afraid to talk, which I sort of enjoy, actually. It gives us reasons to fight. And what has Deuce brought to this offense that maybe was missing last year?
Yeah, one of the things that I'll say about the offense is that the weapons have changed each week.
Okay.
Like the people that have been the headlines have changed week in and week out. There was one game where Deuce was all world, and then the next game, he was doing his job. Like he was blocking and doing the things that you expect a receiver to do when the ball's not coming his way. But then all of a sudden it's Makai Danzy's day, right? And then Randy Pittman was big in the Bama game, but then he got hurt, and then he had a big game on Friday. So while yes, Tommy Castellanos has been he's done a great job of getting the ball to the people that are hot for that particular game. He's also been pretty good at protecting the ball. I mean, I know Friday there were some issues, but throughout the season, he's been good at protecting the ball. And everybody knows that he's got wheels. Like he is
Right.
not afraid. He's not a last resort runner kind of guy. Like he is a guy that's like, if I see something out there and it makes sense, I'm going to make that throw. But if it's not, I am going to run, and I have no problem running. And he's also really good about so far not putting his body in a significant amount of jeopardy, which is super, super important. Deuce Robinson is going to play on Sunday, right? He's got the
Right. For
body
sure.
type. He's got Friday nights bobble aside. He's got sticky hands, and he uses those things to his advantage. There are not a lot of defensive backs that can just man him up and expect to come away with more than 40% of the balls that get thrown his way. So he's a weapon for sure, but he's not the only one. That's kind of how I started this out, is that we could come into the game on Saturday and Squirrel White may have an epic day. So
Right.
we have a glut of speed. We are blessed with an enormous amount of speed. And the things that have kind of risen to the top over the first three games are what we didn't know was, are these guys true go-to wide receivers, right? They may be really fast, but are they going to come down with the catches? And again, aside from the bobble on Friday, they've been coming down with the catches.
So if we wake up on Sunday and you have a big smile on your face because Florida State won the game, is there a player's name you would expect us to hear that has to step up beyond the obvious of what Castellanos can do? Is there
Yeah.
somebody on defense that you think is critical because whatever they're going to match up well against Mark Fletcher, or if I don't know if Miami's breakaway speed returns for this game, which is usually the form of Jordan Lyle on the running back side, and whether
Right.
JJ Trader ever brings that additional level of speed to the wide receiver room. Is there somebody you think has to be sort of in our minds and in our words on Sunday morning?
Yeah, from a defensive side, like I said, I'm pretty okay with the defensive line. What I've not been really particularly fond of is the edge attack, like the edge rushing and making opposing quarterbacks second or third guess because of what's coming at them. So if I'm going to be happy on Sunday, that means for me, the edge play has taken it to another level. That's from the defensive side, and whether that is let's see, James Williams or one of the Desir twins. I don't know who that's going to be yet because we've not really seen anybody kind of take over a game yet from that position. The defensive backs have been strong. They really have been strong. And they've been physical. So I'm pretty confident that will continue. I'm confident that the middle of the defense will be able to clog it up. What I have not seen a lot of or been happy about is guys getting home and making splash plays. So if I'm happy on Sunday, it's probably because that's starting to grow. Like we're starting to see some things come to fruition from that part of the game. From an offensive side, I talked about the wide receiving group a lot, but we're going to see a lot of running the ball this Saturday. And the stable of running backs we have, Roydell Williams is back for this game. He was hurt. But the guys that have been backing him up have been pounding the ball too. This is going to sound really strong, but I think if we get close to 200 yards rushing, I think Florida State fans are going to be happy on Sunday morning. And I know that's a tall task because I know Miami's D line is worlds above where they were last season.
Everybody thinks about Messidor and Bain and the pass rush, their PFF grades on runs. It's actually pretty amazing. Bain's are almost the same thing. It's like you got the same SAT scores on math and verbal when it comes down to it. So I'll be interested to see whether Florida State with their speed can somehow mitigate that, or whether or not there's enough strength up the middle to go to a weaker relative part of the Miami defensive line, which isn't necessarily weak, being possibly going to be a top 5 draft pick at this point, and Messidor at the worst is probably day 2, should he continue down that path. From a Miami standpoint, the thing I'm looking for is kind of what you saw towards the fourth quarter of the Florida game, and I think that I would say that my guess is that Florida's defense is a bit above Florida State's.
I would agree.
Does the weight of that offensive line pounding over and over and over again eventually just wear down the Florida State defensive line? So a close game, that's when the breakout moments happen. Because, yes, sometimes there are blowouts. The last time both of these teams were in the top 10 was when Jameis Winston was here, and that turned into a big blowout for Florida State on the way to a magical time in the Seminoles world. But generally, anything wild that will happen, right? And no matter how bad things are, usually these games are pretty damn close or exciting. The score might seem different towards the end of the game when someone is having to take a little bit of a chance, but there are an occasional blowout. I would not be expecting that, but to me, that advantage on the lines is what would make me think that things are great. Now, if Miami is fortunate enough that Jordan Lyles actually back to supplement what Mark Fletcher's already doing and pushing piles forward, but to have that breakaway speed, I think that's interesting to me. Also, if a player that steps up that is, I think, on the verge of having a breakout game to supplement what's already gone on, if somebody like Keelan Marion, the transfer from BYU, who's been a strong slot receiver but hasn't necessarily had that moment yet, to me, that's the thing. If I'm a Florida State fan, I'm definitely rooting for some rain, because I think that has slowed down Miami's passing attack to some degree. I don't believe Carson Beck's hurt. I just think it's been really freaking raining out. And I think whether it's at the Florida State game or after, you'll see this offense kind of take a whole other level. I would love for it to be on Saturday. I don't know that it will be on Saturday because I value this rivalry too much. And when you think of this rivalry, what does it mean to you as a Seminoles fan? How does this one stack up for you personally versus the Gators, the other obvious one, different situations, different times?
If you ask any Florida State fan, you're going to get a couple of different answers here, depending on, their formative years as a Nole, right?
Right.
My formative years as a Nole were in the 90s. And so Miami was the thorn in the side during that time until they weren't, right? And so for me, the bigger rivalry has always been Miami. But if you ask older fans, it's probably the Gators, right? I have equal fan loathing for both. I would say if I wanted to win one game more, it'd probably be the Miami game because of the pain that was inflicted on me. Right. when I was going to school there, at least sometimes. I think what you'll find across the board, other than the typical trolling that goes on X, and by the way, X can be a cesspool, man. It really can be. And I try to stay above it. But man, there's just so much like disingenuous trolling that goes on. And I get why people do it. What I think you'll find if you really ask Florida State fans, last year was a complete and utter catastrophe.
Right.
And coming into this season, 8-4, 9-3, even though that's not where Florida State as a standard should be, when you were hitting that rock bottom, you other than, you being the ultimate optimist, thinking that you're going to win every game that you play, you would come into this year going, man, if you told me we're going to be 8-4, 9-3 with a chance at 10-2, that's like a complete 180. And I still think the majority of Florida State fans, if you gave them the truth serum, would think we are on that trajectory. Do
Right.
they want to absolutely come away this Saturday with a win? Yes. Do a lot of fans think that that's still on the table even after last Friday? Absolutely. There is still confidence in what this team can do because of how many points they can score and because they don't quit. This is not a quitting type of team. There is a chutzpah that they have that they do not give up. If they do not come out with a victory this weekend, which is also possible, it's probably probable if you were going to ask people that were betting.
Right. I think the current line's 4.5.
Right. The people that, the things that people said at the beginning of the season are still on the table, right? So, and this isn't the old days, Rock, where you lose one game and your whole season is a complete disaster and no one ever wants to talk about the team again. Things are different now. You can weather a loss. In the ACC, more than one loss, you probably can't weather that.
Right.
But there's a chance depending on what other things happen. So I think if you took a poll across the fandom, the majority of fans have a quiet confidence about this weekend. Some people are loud confident, but the majority of people are quiet confidence because they've seen what this team is from a heart standpoint. For my formative years, like I said, and I've got plenty of fans that are Miami fans and plenty of friends that are Gator friends. Miami is the one that I want to have every year. I want to have it.
On the trolling side, I don't start it, but I generally will finish it pretty brutal. I have an on-off switch for that. So if you come after me, great, cool. If you get disrespectful, then I'm going to hit you with the snub part 2 about game day. Right. That's kind of how I approach it, but I don't usually start it. Unfortunately, on Twitter, it then becomes everyone else sees it as opposed to I wish I could just DM it to you to go that route. I come from this, my generation of King fandom is I just literally despise anything to do with Notre Dame and the Gators. Just massive because they ducked. Ultimately, they ducked. Yeah. And Florida State could crush our soul. And it could be either on the field or in BCS computer rankings when you beat them and you still don't go like in 2000. But you never ducked, right? And the two histories of why people think about these logos the way they do are completely intertwined. You literally cannot separate them. And you could separate probably, to me, as an outsider, Florida and Florida State. Because by the time Florida got good again, when Florida State was good, that reputation of what Florida State had become under Bobby Bowden had already been solidified. And in terms of the online chatter, the one thing I would say that I think is a mistaken analysis is that the Virginia offense is better than anything Miami will ever do. I don't think we've even seen what Miami could do. I don't think the competition level has been similar. I think Virginia is way better than I thought. And that offensive power that Miami has may or may not show up on Saturday because Florida State's a good team. But I think hanging your hat on that is probably a mistake related to Mario going a little bit conservative at times. And it has been a torrential downpour in all 3 of those key home games at different times that has made that interesting, not an excuse. But we'll see. And I know the chance for rain.
And it's supposed to rain on Saturday. It's supposed to rain on Saturday. And, any team that likes to run the ball likes that. Florida State's offensive line has been above average, and at times good, which is a big turnaround from last season, which was, they were non-existent. Like the offensive line was like non-existent. So we'll see, if the rain happens, even though I don't like to be in the rain during a game, I don't personally like that. If it helps out the team, I'm all for it. I'm not a big proponent of either that Virginia's offense is better than Miami's and is the best offense that we will see this season. I do think it's one of the better offenses that we will see this season. I don't think that that is something to look at and say, well, that's the best we'll see. So Saturday is going to be easier than that. I don't look at it that way at all.
Yeah, and the thing I did like about Miami having to play that way against the Gators is I now know that Miami can win a couple of different ways, which last year Miami could not. It wasn't really, rely on the defense, rely on the offense. It was definitely rely on the offense and usually mainly on the arm of Cam Ward. So I want to thank you for joining, but I can't let you off the hook and I won't be off the hook. What do you think the game's going to be? What does your gut tell you?
I do think Florida State's going to win the game. And I think it's going to be super close. I think it's going to be, 34-31, 34-28. It's not hope when I've seen evidence that it can be reality, right? That's not hope.
Right.
I've seen evidence that it can be reality. I don't see either team, having a blowout. Like I see this as a one-score game either way. But I do think with being at home, the possibility of a weather deal, and I think that if you are going to take anything from a loss, which you can take something from a loss, is that you can't just arrive at the party. Like you have to do something at the party too. So the defense can't just arrive at the point of attack.
You got to bring some beer with you.
You got to bring something with you, right? You can't be that guy just showing up to consume. So having that happen this past weekend hopefully is a shot in the arm if you needed one with a rivalry game. And I do think Florida State is going to pull out the game.
Yeah, and of course, as one might expect, I have a different take on there.
Sure.
I think it'll be a game that's 24-21 midway through the fourth quarter, and just that last touchdown happens and Miami winds up winning it 31-21, something along those lines, but not till late. Not where the whole country isn't watching what is clearly the best matchup on this weekend's coming schedule. Nothing the schedule this week, though that probably means there'll be a ton of upsets because that's what tends to happen.
Right.
On paper, it doesn't match up with this past week, but this game always does. It's good that it's back on primetime on ABC. SEC is taking a back seat, even if they're getting game day. They still know where the TV ratings are going to be for this one. So we have a split decision here, as you might expect.
That's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be. You got to have belief. We're not at the end of like a mid 5-7 or 2-10 season where we're all just in hopium versus copium.
Right.
But with that, I want to thank Vince for joining. Please, it will be linked in the description below. Please check out his channel on YouTube, Garnet and Old. I'll link you to his Twitter as well. A good follow. Whether or not you're a Seminoles fan or not, if you're trying to find out about the Noles and are not trying to go into troll zone and just want to talk about ball, one of the best channels you can get of the whole creator world of the Seminole fan base. I appreciate Vince joining us, and we will talk to you all soon on College Football Express.
I appreciate it. Go Noles.